Started recording. I'm going to mute my microphone. And Danny, over to you. You can start when you're ready. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Hannah. Hello, welcome to this all-star panel discussion for the eTail Virtual Week. My name's Danny Levy. I'm the Managing Director of eTail based here in Singapore. The discussion today is being brought to you in partnership with Unbxd. So before we get into the discussion, I thought it would be good if each of our retail all-stars could quickly introduce themselves and their top 2 responsibilities at their current company. So Angus, could you kick us off?
Well, thanks. So my name's Angus McDonald. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at Barbeques Galore, which is an Australian retailer with just over 85 stores, which sell a range of products, including barbecues, outdoor furniture, and a number of other similar items. As the Chief Executive Officer, obviously I'm responsible for the whole business. In addition to our retail business in Australia, we've obviously got an online business as well. And we also export into some markets in Southeast Asia and Europe.
Thank you very much, Angus. Abhishek, could you quickly introduce yourself and your top 2 responsibilities?
Yeah, thanks, Danny. Thanks. Welcome everybody at the panel as well. I am Abhishek Jain. I'm the VP of International Markets at Unbxd. The primary responsibilities that I have essentially is expansion of our product offering outside of the US. So I take care of all of our European, Australian, and Southeast Asia businesses. And the second key responsibility that I hold essentially is direction on the product strategy in our go-to-market strategy in terms of where we want to expand further and which geographies we want to further expand into. Unbxd essentially is a product discovery platform. We power the search, browse, as well as recommendation experience for online commerce. Today, we have a presence in about close to 40 countries, and we power close to about 1,200 websites globally.
Thank you, Abhishek. Pavel, over to you.
Thank you, and greetings to everyone. My name is Pavel Dorosevich. I am Chief Operations Officer of KFC Asia Central. It's a region that includes 11 markets and territories in Asia. KFC is a well-known brand that belongs to Yum Corporation, one of the 4 brands in their portfolio. And Asia Central is a very rapidly growing region currently for the brand. I focus on 2 key aspects of brand expansion: safety, especially now in the midst of COVID pandemic, and second, off-premise channel growth and establishment, which allows us to grow in a very new world of basically COVID-prone reality.
Thank you, Pavel. And Reynold, last but not least.
Thank you, Danny. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me introduce myself. I am the Senior Vice President for Merchant Growth, AdTech, and Data Monetization at Gojek. Before this, I used to be with Facebook, where I was the APAC Head of Marketing for brands and e-commerce. And before that, with Unilever, where I was a Global Brand Director in skincare. My current responsibilities at Gojek essentially fall into 2 categories. Number 1, ensuring we provide a great consumer experience to all our users. Number 2, ensuring we deliver growth for all our merchant partners.
Thank you very much. So let's get into the topic for today, which is all around building your omni-channel business in the aftermath of COVID-19, how you can ensure stores are highly tech-enabled, allowing your customers to shop in-store, whilst at the same time leveraging the power and convenience of mobile. So over the past few months, we've seen probably around 5 years of technology adoption happen in a matter of months. And I definitely here at eTail, we've changed the business in ways we probably didn't even dream of a few short months ago. And within retail, stores have obviously been shut down, and retailers have had to pivot so quickly to 100% digital strategy in order to meet customer demands through the health pandemic. And now as we start to reopen the store of the temporary or new normal, or whatever you want to call it, it looks quite different to how it looked a few short months ago. And this means that the omni-channel strategy you put in place really needs to allow you to stay visible and relevant in the mind of your customers, and obviously with those changing consumer demands as well. So it's really around these points that I want to drill into and get into a little bit more today. So to kick us off, I thought it would be good if you could all talk us through, or each talk us through, your current omni-channel strategy or unified commerce strategy, and how the health pandemic has altered this, and where you're seeing success at the moment. And Pavel, it'd be great if I could come to you first, just to kick us off here.
Thank you. And yeah, I should say that a lot of things were developing at their own speed, and a lot of our franchisees, a lot of operators in the industry were taking time to adopt e-commerce innovations and ways to work with off-premise channels until COVID struck. In many markets, we see that our operators were basically taken off guard, and now they have to deal with a new reality at a very different speed. So a lot of priorities were revised, and the current list of priorities looks very different than half a year ago. So what is happening, we're seeing that all across the industry, we're talking about lower volumes, and the structure of the food service industry in terms of channel is shifting, and it's shifting permanently. We see that dine-in, which was the focus of many operators until recently, is not going to be even half of our business very soon. We're talking about the dine-in business going from half or 2/3 of our sales down to 1/3, or maybe, well, 40–50% at the maximum. What we do right now, we are scrambling to build the off-premise channel business, and we are running out of time. That pushes us to reconsider how we work with our vendors, with our partners. So we are much more reliant on those pioneers and those leading edge vendors that can bring best practices into our ecosystem fast enough. We are a lot less, and our operators, our franchisees are a lot less cautious now going forward. We are dying for leading edge solutions, and that's what we are seeing now happening in the industry. New ideas are being brought by outsiders. They are implemented a lot faster, a lot more efficient. We are seeing a lot more agility, and our organizations, our teams are learning a lot faster than before, and we are seeing that the whole organization and ecosystem is changing approach to risk and assessing risk, to learning how to be working with big data in order to be a lot more constructive, taking that risk on instead of just guessing what works, what is not. So summary is that we are seeing a lot of things are just happening faster. We're a lot more reliant on our vendors who can bring the best practice to us sooner. And we are learning how to work with risk in a very different format. We're relying on big data a lot more than yesterday.
Thank you, Pavel. Are there any areas in which you are seeing maybe some green shoots, or you're starting just to see a little bit of success?
Yeah, absolutely. Within the several weeks of the first impact, we could see that not only in KFC and Yum, but all across the industry, operators managed to grow the delivery channel twofold, roughly. And it shows that the ecosystem is capable of turning on a dime and start generating new sales in a different channel, basically compensating for the lost dine-in business. So it's very good to know. We see that agility is there, and we see that it's a guarantor of our success and our winning approach in the future when the new norm is established.
It's quite interesting. I was eating in a restaurant here in Singapore probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and even now you can dine in. I think there was only myself, my wife, and maybe one other couple in the restaurant, and the whole time there was just delivery bikes and bicycles arriving and going off. And I spoke to the owner, and he said, yeah, even now that they've reopened, they're still doing 80% of their revenue through delivery, through ordering. People are still not really returning to the restaurant. So it's been very interesting to see that shift. And they were now contemplating whether they keep all the restaurants open or they close a few and try and focus more on the delivery side of the business. So it's quite an interesting change.
Yeah, definitely you can see that a lot of players are now reconsidering the strategy of destination, and they are talking about extreme convenience when geographical presence and geographical penetration becomes the leading edge of your competitive advantage. How fast you can deliver your food to the door of your customer. Because that's what is happening right now. Instead of bringing them to your premises, you're offering the food to be at their doorstep. But who can win in that race? Definitely those who have access to the leading edge technologies and solutions and thinking on many fronts.
Yeah, I think now you place an order on an ordering app. I mean, I don't know how many notifications you get from the time that you order it till the time that it reaches your house, but I don't know. I remember the days when you used to just ring up and then it would arrive and you'd be like, well, it's here. But now you can track it the whole way. So it's amazing to see that change. Angus, can I come to you now just to kind of talk us through, your current unified commerce strategy and how the health pandemic has impacted things at your company?
Yeah, thanks, Danny. So we operate in a category that is a considered purchase category. So the type of products that we sell, people typically don't just on a whim decide to shop in this category. They're likely doing a bit of research ahead of time if they're thinking about updating their outdoor area or their patio. And so there's quite a bit of research that does happen online in our category ahead of time. And so that does make it a very natural environment to embrace an omni-channel strategy in terms of how you bring that experience together. Much at the same time, the physical presence also really adds to that importantly in terms of people being able to come to see the product, and being a leisure and a high involvement category. As a leisure category, there's a natural enjoyment that comes from actually coming in to shop in our category. So if you compare that to other more commodity type categories, there's obviously a very high attraction to a more frictionless experience, subscription, those sorts of things. But in our type of category, people are looking to do lots of research online ahead of time and then really enjoy spending that time in a store, getting familiar with the products, speaking to our team members and getting some of their expertise and wisdom in helping them pick the right products. So with that as a bit of a starting position, we've obviously been investing in developing an omni-channel approach to the way that we bring our offer together for some time, and have been certainly adopting things like click and collect, which really is the ultimate fusion of physical and digital together. So that has absolutely been part of our journey to date. If we then reflect on how the pandemic has changed that, there's no question though that it has really significantly accelerated the consumer adoption of that cross-channel or omni-channel approach to engaging with their brands of choice. Fortunately for us here in Australia, we haven't seen the same extremity of lockdowns as we've seen in other parts of the world. So in our business, the overwhelming majority of our physical stores have continued to trade throughout that time. However, even with that being the case, we've seen a significant increase in our mix of online sales. So customers shopping online, even if that's click and collect or delivery, that has increased greatly as a percentage of our business overall, even though people have still been able to shop in that physical environment. And I think that setting is a behaviour change that is absolutely here to stay. And we'll see Australia, which compared to markets like the UK and others, has been a little bit of a laggard in terms of the adoption of e-commerce. Many retailers in Australia are now really seeing that increase significantly as a percentage of their sales. And I think that will drive an intensification of the investment and motivation to really continue embracing that omni-channel approach to retail.
Yeah, really interesting, Angus. You mentioned that, what you were saying before, there was still a lot of pre-research going on, so people would really take their time before they come into the store. Has that now intensified, given that people are maybe more cautious about going out, that they're even more educated when they step into the store? And has that made things, I guess, has it changed the interaction with your sales reps on the floor in terms of how educated the customer is when they walk in?
Well, it's a really good point, Danny, is that there is a lot of, obviously with more people doing that pre-purchase research, and we've certainly seen significant growth in our online traffic throughout the period of the pandemic, which would reflect that there's more of that behaviour happening. The other thing is that our category is one which actually is favoured by people spending more time at home. And so people spending more time at home, thinking more about participating in our category, that has certainly led to increased interest in research in our part of the retail market. At the same time, though, those that are coming into physical stores are coming with a much clearer purpose in mind. So we're seeing a much greater percentage of our in-store traffic being a more informed customer that's actually further along the purchase journey in terms of coming in more close to the end of that process, more committed to, I'm here because I've had a look at this product online and I just want to pick it up and buy it, and less browsing traffic as a result of that. And again, I think that's just an acceleration of the trend that we already knew was there.
Yeah, interesting. Does that change the attributes or what you look for the in-store staff in a way? Do you think it will shift in eventually or not really?
Well, look. I guess the behaviour that our team in stores are focused on may change a little. What's important to recognise, and this is true of a number of other retailers in specialty retail segments like ours, is that the majority of our online sales are actually click and collect, and so a physical part of the journey is still an important part of the process. It's just that the customer is engaged in that journey a little differently, and so our team in stores may increasingly shift to supporting customers who have maybe already completed a click and collect transaction or have already completed some research online, or possibly even helping a customer to look at a product that they may then choose to buy online at a later time. It does change that process a little bit, but we do still see as a high involvement category that physical store experience as being important for our brand.
Yeah, just one more question before I go to Reynold. Do you still find that you're able to upsell customers when they come into the store? If they're that educated, they already know what they want to purchase, is there still an upsell opportunity there?
Well, look, that is one of the great challenges, is that a full physical store sales process is that, with the expertise of the team member, there's an opportunity to facilitate a journey through finding the right solution for the customer. And if that presents an opportunity to upgrade them into a better or a different product, obviously that's a very natural process when that's done person to person. If the customer has already committed to a transaction online, when they're walking into the store, they're often looking just to come in, pick up the product and leave. And so that is definitely a challenge. Though the other thing that we have also found is that customers who are cross-channel customers, so those that are shopping online but also visiting our physical stores, actually transact more often. And so maybe in that specific transaction, that may be a little more difficult. And that's certainly something that we do want to try and find better solutions for. But you also find that over time, those customers, maybe they've come in to pick something up on that particular occasion, but they're also more likely to actually come back and visit the store again later as well.
Got it. Thanks, Angus. Really appreciate it. And Reynold, could I come to you now just to talk us through your unified commerce strategy and what's really been going on with Gojek through the health pandemic?
Sure, Danny. I think if you think about Gojek, we are a super app. We're present across Southeast Asia in transport, in e-commerce, in food delivery, in online and offline electronic payments, and also in the delivery of e-commerce products. So in a sense, we provide the infrastructure of the digital economy. Now, if you think about the pandemic and the change that it's driven, certainly it's driven less commuting and more leisure time, more time at home. As Angus said, there's been an acceleration in consumer adoption of digital platforms. There's been a spike in e-commerce, and we see that in the usage of our platform. There's been an acceleration in the adoption of e-payments, which has also been a benefit for us. We have a partnership with HaloDoc for telemedicine, and there's been a huge surge in telemedicine, as you can imagine. And as Pavel said, there's food delivery has been accelerating as a share of the restaurant business. And again, that's been quite good for us. So we've been well positioned, I would say, to support both consumers and merchant partners during this pandemic. And I would say we've been also able to leverage our data to provide better consumer experiences and to drive growth for merchant partners.
Is there anything you're seeing around the consumer experience side? Is there anything consumers are looking for now that maybe they weren't before?
It's okay, a few trends, right? So number one, you're certainly seeing people having a bit more leisure time. We've launched a video streaming app, and it's been accelerated in terms of adoption as a result of that. And I think Angus was speaking about other things in his category which are related to this as well. So that is one. Two, I think on e-commerce across the board, we're seeing consumers demanding access to many more products than they wanted before, simply because many of these are not accessible in physical retail. There's a growing interest in hygiene in the food delivery business, obviously. And I think it's working out to the benefit of big brands because they come with a certain degree of trust. Now that, of course, is putting pressure on small and medium enterprises. And if you think about what's happening with the economy, a lot of people are turning to small and medium enterprises in food as a means of supplanting their income, or in some cases as the primary income. And so we've been working hard to create tools to give them opportunities to build brands for themselves and to grow their businesses.
Got it. Thanks, Reynold. And Abhishek, can I come to you? What are you seeing with some of the partners you work with? What are some of your observations in the market around really the shift in the omni-channel strategy and the health pandemic?
Sure. We are essentially a technology enabler for all our customers to drive their e-commerce strategy. And now that strategy has now embedded even the offline and the online world and has actually truly become omni-channel in a lot of ways. But before we actually go there, I think the one thing that probably which essentially stands out really, really well is what is really happening in the online world. And then probably we can talk about in terms of how this is impacting the omni-channel strategy as well. So today, based on the 1200 odd sites that we power across verticals, what we're actually seeing is the adoption to e-commerce has been very, very rapid. Today, we are actually powering more traffic than what we typically power during the holiday season. For example, it's the same amount of traffic that you really see that you typically see during November and December. On a year-on-year comparison basis, the traffic that we're serving is 100% more compared to what we were actually basically powering last year same time. So clearly there has been a massive movement of people moving online. A lot of it is driven by the current situation, but we also inherently believe a large section of this shoppers will continue to remain online, and only a few of them will actually go back, or some of them will go back as the economy opens up or as the markets go back to normalcy. And as a result, whatever omni-channel strategy that you have to decide, so the in turn the e-commerce and the online as well as the offline has to be meshed really, really closely. I'll just take a couple of examples in terms of what we really have done with a few of our customers to help them accelerate that. I think this was something that Angus was mentioning in a prior point as well. So what we have enabled essentially is something called a store-in-store kind of a concept, where you are on an online store and you're not just able to look at what is available on the online store, but you're also able to look at the inventory that is available in the store which is nearest to you, so that you can make a really quick purchase and do a curbside collection essentially. So I think that essentially we have seen massive adoption across our customer base in store-in-store kind of offering that essentially we have. The second place where we have seen a lot of adoption, and I think that is something we are seeing very increasing trend, is people trying to trying to figure out how they can use their point of sale data to reach out to their customers online. I think that essentially also something that we're seeing a massive adoption on. People are trying to give us their point of sale data, figuring out how they can run marketing campaigns by making sense of this, understanding what the purchase behavior has been, what the affinity of those customers are in that for these customers are, and then curate very personalized campaigns around them. So that is one more thing that we have seen a very large adoption as far as omnichannel strategy is concerned. Obviously, the quality of the second part is completely dependent upon in terms of how well you are actually collecting the point of sale data in the first place. But these are the two examples that come to my mind when we think about how people are trying to put these two experiences of kind of together and making it as seamless as possible.
And now that consumers are spending more time online, are you seeing that they're almost getting more savvy in their approach? Do you have to be doing things better now in terms of the personalization, or in terms of being able to offer the nearest inventory option, or would they then jump to someone else? Because I guess before, you could do both with a lot more flexibility and freedom, but now you're transacting all the time, you're browsing all the time in the online or digital channels. Do you have to really be looking to level up and push yourself much more than you'd have to do before?
Absolutely. And I think as Reynold mentioned earlier, right, that you have a situation where people have far more leisure time. and they're trying to use that leisure time in terms of either consuming content online or basically shopping more on in the online world. And frankly, at a lot of times, essentially out of necessity, that you have to really do things online because there are limitations in terms of when you can move out or not. So from an experience perspective, absolutely, you have to provide the best discovery experience that you can offer. Otherwise, they always will move to competition if you're not getting the right product that they are really looking for. So you clearly have to up your game in terms of how tech savvy you make the site, and making sure that you are ahead of the curve rather than behind it.
Love it. So much good stuff there, guys. So let's go into the second question. So in terms of channels, and we've touched on this a bit, but how can you coordinate them so that you're able to drive results across multiple channels instead of individual ones, and make sure that you're really cultivating a strong community of customers, both online and offline? So Angus, can I come to you again to kick us off here?
Yeah, thanks, Danny. I think Abhishek actually started to touch on a couple of points that I'll make now. And it's really, I guess, starts with the recognition that when you're embracing an omni-channel approach, is that online and offline channels are not in competition with each other, which is often a challenge that many organisations, I believe, wrestle with, particularly when you've got team members in physical stores that may have regarded online as a competitor. It's a really important message to land in your organisation, is that either channel is actually in itself has its own points of value, but when you bring them together is when you get the best overall outcome, and that is that the sum is greater than the parts. And so really looking at those opportunities for how each channel can actually leverage and support the other, and so how the online experience can help connect customers with the physical store experience. And Abhishek mentioned before about product availability and other pieces of information that help connect customers with that physical store experience. Likewise, when a customer's standing in a store, how can they use the content available online, information, videos, other materials to help them support making that purchase decision in the physical environment, or better still, perhaps gain access to extended ranges of product that might not be available in that local store. That, okay, I don't have those here, but I've got more available, you can see them online. It's looking for those connection points about how you can use the digital environment to drive more customers to connect with your physical experience. And then from the physical experience, use the digital environment to basically extend your offer beyond the four walls of your physical store.
Is there a way that you can really, I guess, single out or find the right connection points?
Look, I'm sure this is different for every business, but I guess you're looking for what are those critical control points, those critical measures, and then how can you make sure that they're integrated into the way that you measure success in your organisation? Are KPIs aligned around supporting behaviour that makes the most of those opportunities? And so thinking about the way stores are recognised for sales and how you make sure that physical stores are being recognised for sales that might originate in the online channel, as well as also measuring the right behaviours online and using the right attribution model so that you can identify that things like store stock checks on the website are a pretty good indicator of a customer that's fairly engaged and likely to visit a physical store, and how can you focus on those behaviours. And if those things are happening more often, then you've got some confidence that you're likely to be driving more customers into your stores. So it's really looking for those key control points and putting the right measures and KPIs in place across your organisation so that the different parts of your business are actually working together in making the most of those opportunities.
Great point there. Abhishek, can I come to you to get your thoughts here?
Sure. I think the way we approach this particular problem in terms of driving cross-channel and how do you basically mesh the two together, essentially we think of this, as Angus mentioned previously, as one strategy. Today, if you're a customer and who is actually shopping both digitally as well as physically, you want a seamless experience. It's not a good to have anymore. It's a must have if you intend to thrive and further go forward in the current market environment. So I think that is something which has to be the cornerstone in terms of whatever you are essentially planning as far as the omni-channel strategy is concerned. And I think one thing that we have seen, and I think that is becoming more and more pronounced during the pandemic. And this is again leaning back on what Angus was mentioning in the previous point. The amount of research that we are seeing customers doing before buying anything has actually increased in a big and massive way. So that is an important trend that we need to latch up to. So we are seeing that the customer essentially is doing the research before buying the product, either physically in your offline store or the online store. But what that really means for you from an omnichannel strategy, what that really means is your online
Mm.
experience should be robust enough, provide the right level of discovery. By that you mean you need to be able to find the right product, have the right, and so that whatever is your intent, the retailer is able to capture that and showcase the right product to you in the digital world, as well as also give enough information about the product, right? One thing that really works and we have seen across customers is customers who have very enriched catalogs, right? People who have done a lot of attribution in terms of the specifications, the usability of the product, they have seen much better conversion as well. And be it the conversion might happen in a different channel because you might go up to the physical store and buy it, but that is something that we've seen quite significantly. So a couple of things that come to my mind on this particular point, Danny, essentially is a couple of our customers today, right? One essentially is a fashion retailer in Australia based out of Melbourne, and the other one essentially is an eyewear retailer in India. What they have implemented is a strategy called endless aisle, and I think that's actually very interesting. You can look at what they have today in the online world, but when you go to the physical store, maybe you are not just limited by the merchandise that is actually available in the store, because they have enabled discovery of more products essentially in the physical store itself. What that helps you do essentially is create a much wider selection for the customer, and this helps in decision making. So he might end up buying something either in the physical store or something that he likes which might not be in your store at that particular point of time. So that is something which we have seen is a very interesting development of extending the physical store to an endless aisle kind of situation. So
Yeah.
net, if I summarize, the focus of any omnichannel strategy has to be how do you make sure that your customers are discovering the right product, whichever channel they are in at that particular point. It does not matter
Yeah.
through a sales assistant or through a digital tool that can help you do that.
Yeah, I love the endless aisle concept because it's like, why would you limit yourself to the physical store constraints when you don't do that online, right? So you may
Exactly.
as well bridge the two. Yeah,
Exactly.
and I know I also think as well, like you're saying, right, all around this research point. Just before I come to Reynold here, you've got customers doing all this research. So again, you almost have to, I guess, try and address the customer objections or concerns up front on the website so that they can get all their questions answered before they then decide to come into the store. Because if they maybe can't find the answer to their question online, you may be going to lose the customer at that touch point rather than actually see them, come through and walk into the store itself. So,
Absolutely.
yep.
Yeah.
So we'll come to Reynold. So Reynold, could you talk us through what you're doing a little bit more at Gojek to kind of bridge these two channels?
Sure, Danny. I think that making a link between what consumers do online and what they do offline is often the biggest challenge. Now, as a super app, understanding the consumer's online journey is relatively easy for us. One of our partners, who is a major restaurant chain, measured the ROI of shoppable ads on our platform. And of course, there's an ROI from online purchases. But what was really interesting was they found that there was also a significant impact in driving offline traffic to their stores. And that was quite interesting. Now, when it comes to following the consumer's interests and actions offline and providing a tool for merchants to increase store traffic and sales, our e-payments product is a key link which allows us to do this. A second link is transportation, which often provides us with consumer intent as it relates to malls or shopping centers that they are on the way to. So when we put the two together with our shoppable ads, I would say we have a very strong position of growth tools across both online and offline.
And I guess you're finding because Gojek's so mobile, consumers almost don't even think about it, right? I mean, they're taking the device everywhere they go. So there isn't really that same mental shift of, oh, I'm online or I'm in the store. Gojek's always been mobile first, so you're not really having to, I guess, educate in the same way, or is it just people are just used to always having the app with them, I guess?
People are definitely used to always having
Yeah.
the app with them. And
Yeah.
I think, over time, we've added so many services. There have been 18 or 20 different services on the app that people have just gotten used to the convenience of being able to use this one app for everything. And that is a major value that we provide to consumers.
Yeah, because I guess for some people as well, listening to this panel, I don't think they're quite aware of all the different things you can do on the Gojek app inside Indonesia. Could you talk us through that very quickly about, just what it is you can actually do on the app? Because it's quite amazing.
Well, you can call a Gojek, which is a motorcycle taxi. That's how it started. And then we found that people were using the motorcycle taxi to do errands and bring things from supermarkets. And so now we've got GoMart, which allows you to buy pretty much anything you can get in a supermarket or a mini market. Then people started using the Gojeks to do errands and picking up food from restaurants. So now we've got GoFood, which has sort of made that process more streamlined. Then people found that it was a bit challenging to pay for some of these things, because there was no easy way of doing this. This is, in a context where most people don't have credit cards, etc. And that's why we ended up creating GoPay, which allows you to pay for things both online and offline. Along the way, we had laundry services, we had in-home cleaning services. At one point in time, I believe we were offering the world's largest massage service, in-home massage service. We also had beauty services in-home. And then now, of course, we have our own video streaming app. And these are just some of the things. There are some which haven't survived, obviously, because it didn't do well. But over time, we've launched more than 20 such services for consumers.
Yeah. And I must imagine you're seeing that consumers in Indonesia and maybe outside as well, they must be spending even more time in the app than they were before, because you really just don't need to leave it.
Yes, I'd say that, the difference between Gojek and some other apps is that I wouldn't say this is an app where people spend a lot of time. This is an app where people spend money, where they go online and, buy things and do things. In fact, I would be a bit unhappy if people end up spending too much time, because it means there's a little too much inconvenience in getting to what they want. So we want people to spend, of course, as much time as they wish, but to do it as quickly and as easily as possible.
Got it. Thank you, Reynold. And Pavel, can I come to you lastly on how you're bridging the two channels?
Yeah, sure. In case of established brands, the challenge is actually not to lose the customers that are used to speed and taste that they learned with the brand over the years in on-site or on-premise channel and dining in takeaway over the counter. When we're talking about establishing e-commerce platform, that's where we see a lot of disappointment occurs when people get that food not to order cold, too late, and they are not capable, they're not able to communicate with the brand. They are not able to let that steam out because the conversational commerce is not up to speed. So we are seeing the challenge perceiving that consumer to be one person who is communicating with the brand throughout the different channels and expects the same level of key attributes of the brand attributes to be delivered, whether it's dine-in, whether it's delivery or drive-in or drive-through. How we do that, even though the ability to converse with the customer goes down as we go farther and farther away from the on-premise, right? So probably we need to figure out variety. Maybe it should be a lot less variety in delivery, especially when it goes over the border to aggregator field. Maybe it should be a different pricing. It should be a different AI deployed in those conversational commerce platforms and even our own apps. So bottom line, the challenge is to keep the perspective of the same person in communicating with the brand across different channels. And second, making sure that we know what are those one or two key attributes of our brand that we never want to let go, whether we are serving a customer on-premise or off-premise.
I think, and that's the challenge. I mean, we've certainly seen that in our own business as we pivoted so fast online. We really forgot about some of our core values and some of our, what we stood for, because we were just trying to shift everything and, make sure we survived this period. And I guess a lot of brands have been through that journey now, and now it's about, making sure that they reintroduce, what they were known for and what customers really enjoyed about interacting with that company.
Yeah, absolutely. If you stand for speed and value, keep doing it in every channel. If there is no excuse, if you're suddenly become too slow, there is no excuse that it's a new channel for you. Guests will drop you even in your core channel of on-premise business.
I think that takes us nicely into the next question. So Pavel, I'll stay with you, and just around how you track and measure the online and offline customer journey. Anything that you're doing there just to make sure that you're really gathering and optimizing the data across the two touch points?
So I would say we are significantly, as legacy players, larger players in food service, in most cases we're late adopters. And right now we rely heavily on vendors. And I mentioned that in the first question, we rely on our business partners who did all the heavy lifting for us. And we are using their knowledge, their experience, best practices when developing our own e-commerce solutions. So when it comes to examples, I would say that let's take chatbot ordering and chatbot payment. A lot of brands are using those vendors, and those solutions are actually brand agnostic. Why not taking them and deploying in that chat channel right away? And actually that helps both understanding the pain points of our own e-commerce applications better and curing those pains faster. And also it helps us to keep guests with us for much longer, other than experimenting and trying to find where we are dropping the ball.
Got it. Angus, can you share just a little bit more about what you're doing here?
Well, I think I guess the technology's advanced a lot in this area in recent times, and the reality is that today, particularly with mobile devices, there's more things you can measure today than ever before. So it is important to think carefully about what it is you actually want to measure and what kind of behaviour you want to be using as a bit of an indicator of what's going to happen. You've got platforms like Google and Facebook and others that provide all sorts of rich information in this area where you can geofence locations based on where a person has been with their device. And you may actually be at risk of being swamped with more data than you can actually use effectively. I think it comes back to a little bit like the conversation earlier on about identifying those key measures of success and being really clear about what those particular drivers are. The other thing I'd say is really important, particularly when you're thinking about online analytics, is to be careful about things like last click attribution. You've got to think about the full extent of the customer's journey and make sure that you're aware of the different stages that people may shift from one part of the process to the other. But I think working through clearly with a well thought through attribution model so that you can start to take those key measures of behaviour and use that to make better decisions. That's obviously the secret sauce that every organisation will be working hard to get right. But again, I think today we're spoiled for choice. There's masses of information that you can use to measure behaviour. It's just about picking the ones that matter most to your brand.
Got it. And Abhishek, can I come to you now for your thoughts here?
Sure. I think from our perspective on this particular point, essentially, and I think all the other panelists also spoke about it. Today we have a treasure trove of data that we're actually collecting. So if we talk about in terms of simple things like, we are able to track the user journey from the time he has come on the app or the website till the time he checks out. So everything in between, basically, which is search, his CTR, what his query results are, where he's clicking, what he's adding to carts, all of this essentially is something that you can collect and measure today. So basically now there are two aspects which come out of it. One essentially is, obviously there is a collection part that you're able to collect all of this together in some cohesive fashion and basically give the data to the retailer so that he can start comprehending. But the real success that you really need to give to retailers essentially is be able to drive actionable insights in an automated fashion from this data set that you're really collecting. because there is the one aspect is just to collect the data, and you have a ton of data that you can actually collect, but then also to tell them absolutely actionable insight in terms of if they do step 1, 2, 3, this is the most likely outcome that actually is going to come, and this has to come from the product itself. This cannot be really done manually, and I think that is where the amount of data that they're collecting at the 360-degree level can really translate into increased revenue and conversion and engagement with your customers. I'll give you a very small example in this. So one of our customers essentially is a large book retailer based out of the UK, right? So we obviously give them a lot of insights in terms of what the search queries are, what the trending searches are. We tell them in terms of where a particular user is spending most of his time. But then what that is just one piece. But the most important piece is then you can start designing promotional campaigns around that in terms of what if a particular user has affinity towards, let's say, gardening books or cookbooks or autobiographies, for example, right? You can reach out to them with content which has their affinity, which where you have baked their affinity, and then you start getting much more engagement and basically conversion. So that's how at least we think about it. Rather than just capturing the data, it's important to give actionable insights to your customers, or rather to the retailer, so that they can finally do an end user fit.
Got it. So it's all around actionable insights. So Reynold, I'm going to come to you for the next question, which I guess kind of ties in anyway with the previous one, from a Gojek perspective. So apart from just tracking and measuring and making sure that you're getting the actionable insights, as Abhishek mentioned, how are you leveraging the data you gather from the app, from your kind of mobile shoppers, so that you can send curated and personalized content across to them that would, I guess, push them down or influence future purchase decisions?
So obviously this is something that might be a little bit easier for us, simply because we're a super app and almost everything that consumers do on the app is something that we can track and measure. Now we collect more than 6 billion consumer actions daily. And I think, as Angus said earlier, that creates its own problem, which is which of these data points is really of value. Now, to really turn this into value, you have to manage it well. The data has to be clean. It needs to have a taxonomy which classifies different data points. And then you need to be able to visualize this. We've been lucky that we've got a good data science team which is able to visualize these data points and turn them into insights. For example, we can see changes in consumer demand for each cell in a grid on a map of any city where we are present. And we can see changes in demand in different categories, and we can respond to that in real time. So that's something that you can do as a business to improve the consumer experience. Another thing we can do here is get a holistic view of the consumer and look for changes in the consumer's life stage, which might be a signal that the consumer will soon be wanting something different, maybe wanting something more premium, maybe wanting something more family oriented. And there are clues in the consumer behavior pattern that we pick up which tell us that this is likely to happen. Therefore, we are able to personalize what each consumer sees on the app. What each consumer sees is different based partly on where they are. What each consumer sees is different based on the time of the day. And what each consumer sees is different based on what we know about their life stage and their propensities to different categories and different brands. That ensures that what they see is relevant to them personally. And we can measure that in terms of their actions and their transactions. The more relevant it is, the more likely we are to see the consumer taking action on what they see and buying something. And I think that's really the essence of our approach.
I love that, Reynold. Can you talk about what are some of the clues very quickly? What are some of the signals that you see?
Well, let me take it in a slightly simple way to begin with, but then we can put a few things together, right? So we can see, for example, not at an individual level, but let's say at an aggregate level, we can identify a group of people who have changed their daily pattern of transport. These are people who are now going to a different location in the mornings than they were going 1 month ago. You can be fairly certain that these are people who've changed their job, right? So that's one signal. Now we look at these people's spending pattern across both online and offline. And if we see a significant increase in their spending pattern, you can be fairly certain that this is somebody who's earning more money. Thirdly, we can look at this person's sensitivity to promotions and discounts, and you can see whether this person is more sensitive to promotions and discounts, or indeed is agnostic to promotions and discounts. And so you can sense what kind of a shift has taken place in the consumer's life stage. Somebody came to us once and said, can you identify for me a very premium brand? And they said, can you identify for me everybody who is an air traveler? Now, it turns out that's rather simple. We look at people who use our transportation service to go to the airport, but we deduct the people who go to the airport every day, because those are people who are working there. Yeah. So those who are going infrequently are the air travelers. And of course, that's a very relevant segment to premium brands and premium categories. So these are just a couple of examples, and there are many, many more. We've been able to advise some of our restaurant partners on hotspots where there is untapped demand for their category of product, and could be a good location for them to open their next outlet or store. We've been able to open cloud kitchens in areas which are underserved and give access to small and medium enterprises to have a presence there and access larger markets through our services. So many things which can do, but all of this is based on the foundation of collecting the data, visualizing it, and managing it in a way to give you actionable insights.
Collecting the data, visualizing it, and turning it into actionable insights. Are they the three?
That's right.
Very good. I'm gonna steal that playbook, Reynold. Pavel, can I come to you quickly just to get your thoughts here before we go on to the next question?
Yeah, absolutely. So on our side, we see the challenge currently is a lot simpler since we're not super app where our organizations and our operators do not have that talent, that capabilities still. And like I mentioned, we rely heavily on our vendors and partners for big data and insights. And yet the dialogue that we currently build with our guests, with our customers through either feedback after the transaction or repeat order in those cases where we have brand app in the market, we want to make sure that we have enough statistically significant amount of responses so we can judge what is happening, and it should be clean. So we want to make sure that team members or telephone center, call center teams do not interfere and do not solicit the positive feedback. We want to make sure that we have a very well-balanced picture. And for that, we see a huge opportunity right now in leveraging the social listening or social media listening component, where you don't get a restaurant or store-specific feedback, but you get a very nice understanding of balance of positive and negative responses in general. So combining restaurant-level feedback with the social listening feedback that we can analyze and come up with a better understanding where to focus our effort, that's the current challenge. And going forward, yeah, definitely, it's building that organizational capability that would allow us to come up with insights going forward for years and years, and stop relying on what is practically too expensive for some of our markets, for some of our operators. It's a reliance on outside vendors for those insights.
Okay. So really it's about fast tracking the social listening, the in-store listening, and making sure that you can optimize the platform so that you're really giving your customers what they want.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So we can close the loop. Yeah, that loop.
Do you have is there a specific timeline you're looking at, Pavel? I mean, how quickly are you looking to do this?
Well, definitely it must happen this year, at least the ability to come up with the system that allows us to respond quickly. Okay,
got it. So I guess we just need to go in now around attribution and digital marketing efforts. So around, you know, the in-store, the online purchases, and how you can more effectively track your ROI. So we've got about 10 minutes left. So I'm just going to kind of come to you all in quick fire here to go through this one. So Angus, could you kind of kick us off here with a kind of minute or two answer?
Yeah, well, I think I touched on it a little bit earlier on, which is really the same story about just being really clear about what your attribution model actually is. Obviously, with the partners you're working with across the different digital touch points that you have, there'll be a wealth of information available It's just about being really clear at which ones of those are strategically important to you. I guess the lesson is that if you pick the wrong attribution model, you will actually start to drive the wrong behaviour. And there's lots of sort of perverse incentives to overinvest in the wrong sorts of digital marketing activities when you get those things wrong. So I think it's a really careful approach to think about it strategically for your organisation, the way that it integrates. Often digital marketers may think about some of these things differently to the way other parts of your organisation may do, and the way that you bring all of those pieces together to have a singular view around how the organisation together delivers those outcomes is very important.
Got it. Reynold?
Danny, I think the easy part for a platform like us is online attribution because it's a closed loop.
Okay.
Right? The hard part, not just for us, but maybe for most of our partners, is offline. But when you leverage an e-payment partner like Gojek, it can be easier. Recently, we were approached by the trade desk, and we've had a partnership with them. And they've just released a case study with McDonald's Indonesia and OMD.
Yeah. Maybe you can explain who the trade desk are very quickly. I don't know if everyone would know.
The trade desk are perhaps one of the largest trading desks or trading platforms, which allows you to place your advertisements on online channels.
It's like programmatic, right?
Programmatic
buying. Yeah.
And the big challenge with online advertising is how do you connect an online advertisement to an offline purchase? And what we've been able to do by leveraging our e-payment product is, for example, in this McDonald's case study, they placed advertisements on a number of different online channels. We were able to identify which of these channels were leading to actual in-store purchases. And so over the course of the campaign, they were able to get a 6.1 times return on ad spend by using this attribution. So I think we've got a very interesting product and service here. And I must point out that none of these advertisements were run on Gojek. And so we have no skin in that game.
Interesting. Great stats. Interesting to share. Abhishek, can I get your thoughts here?
Sure. I think a lot of people talk about in terms of, at the end of the day, attribution is something that it's a complex game. It's not easy, especially from an offline perspective. The way our worldview, at least, is that this can be achieved essentially by developing a coherent experience across channels and customer journeys. For example, a product review or a rating on an online store to an interaction in store. We need to figure out in terms of how that can be mapped back with the consecutive purchase, and then enabled further with a better product discovery experience, so that you understand in terms of what the customer is really looking for. And I think the better you become in predicting the choices and shopper affinities based on what their behavior is, I think the better, more effectively you can start attributing your marketing efforts to increase your ROI. So that's essentially what our view.
Got it. So that takes us nicely into the last question. And the last question is all around, what do you think the store of the future will look like? So we've got about 5 minutes left here. So if each of you could maybe again just spend a couple of minutes kind of talking us through what in your opinion you think the store of the future will look like, that would be fantastic. So Abhishek, I'll come back to you here to kind of gaze into your crystal ball and give us your future predictions about what the store of the future will look like. And I would imagine if I asked you 5 years ago, your prediction would have been wrong. So maybe I'll be kind and just say, what will the store of the future look like in 12 months?
Correct. So I think exactly. I think a lot of things are changing over the course of the pandemic, and as I think you had pointed out, the last 6 months have seen massive digital adoption compared to what you would typically see in a regular in business as usual kind of scenarios. But from our perspective, the digital the store of the future has to have 3 or 4 critical aspects, at least in my view. One essentially is a seamless experience, no matter whether you're online and offline. The retailer really needs to know what essentially is what you want. They need to understand intent at every step of the shopping journey so that they can shorten your path to purchase. And that can only be done if the digital discovery piece essentially is very, very astute. So digital discovery needs to be very well refined in terms of how you're discovering your products, how you're interacting with them. I think that essentially is top notch in the store of the future. And then And then that needs to be backed up by very intelligent, data-driven merchandising. We don't put enough attention in terms of how important merchandising is. But today, if you really look at merchandising, this is more of a gut feeling game rather than a data backed up game for most of the retailers. But I think if we are able to drive data-driven merchandising, that essentially will help you segment your customers, figure out in terms of which customer essentially you can reach out to for what kind of products, how do you rank your products, and all of that good stuff. So digital merchandising, intelligent merchandising essentially is a very important part in terms of the store of the future.
Yeah. So your store of the future, 3 key pillars. 1 is the seamless experience, 2 is the digital discovery, and 3 is the data-driven merchandising.
Correct.
Great. Send me a link. I'm coming to shop with you. And Pavel, could you talk us through your store of the future?
Yeah, and I'm talking about physical restaurant, right? So
yeah,
as the ongoing pandemic showed that we need to rethink our reliance on dine-in. So the format of a restaurant will change, the footprint will change, the layout will change, of course, to give way to much higher proportion of off-premise sales. The function of front counter will change from order taking and basically payment gateway. It will become more and more a delivery and dispatch point where both individual customers and the riders will approach for the order to be picked up. Resilience becomes a very significant factor of success going forward, especially for large brands that are currently reliant heavily on mall locations. Mall can be closed in a lockdown for months and months, so you need entrance to the street and independent life support, quote unquote, independent from the mall system. So we will see less reliance, I believe, on those shopping center going forward. And also ultimate convenience becomes a big point of success. As I mentioned, a lot of brands until recently would go for destination concept and bring customers to your humongous behemoths. Real estate would cost millions there. But now we're seeing that it's a lot more reasonable to expect that brands will deliver the food to your doorstep. So they will need less of a footprint, but a lot more distribution points or a lot more kitchens. When it comes to dark kitchen or not dark kitchen, I think larger brands still would stay away from it for a while, watching the success of those concepts launched now by a lot of aggregators. Right now, the belief, it seems like among larger players, the belief is such that as long as you have the restaurant and you can use it as a distribution for a point for delivery channel, why not using it as a brand enhancement asset for takeaway? People will still come to you if you are convenient, if you are geographically, if you're in geographical proximity. So I believe that for larger players, dark kitchen is not a big success component for a while, for now.
So the 2 key things I took from that, Pavel, were, I guess, from an operator's perspective, it's around that resilience, that resilient mindset, and being able to roll with the punches and adapt quickly to very quick changing circumstances. And the second point was really around ultimate convenience. So you've really got to be going to your customer and making sure that you're delivering the best customer experience possible. And I guess back to your earlier point, making sure that you're listening to them in their channel of choice so that you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Love it. Thank you, Pavel. And Reynold?
Danny,
store of the future.
Let me think of it in terms of principles rather than whether it's going to be physical or delivery, or whether it's going to be some Star Trek like 3D printer in your home. Who knows, right? I'd say 4 key principles.
Okay.
Number 1, from the consumer point of view, number 1, show me what I need or want magically before I ask for it. Number 2, help me buy it frugally at the best price in the world. Number 3, help me get it conveniently wherever and whenever I want it. Number 4, help me pay for it effortlessly but also 100% safely and securely.
Got it. And I guess linked to all these things as well around the effortless payment, is it also doing things in as few clicks as possible?
Indeed. I think the whole thing about sort of not needing to search for it, it appears before you ask for it, right? The best price appears without you needing to search for it. You get it conveniently wherever, whether it's in your home or whether it's on the go, or whether it's indeed, as Pavel said, sometimes you want to go to a physical restaurant, absolutely, right? So you want it when you want it, where you want it. So I think all of this together is just speaking about making it convenient and effortless for the consumer. Now, there's a whole lot of technology that's going to go behind this, and people have spoken about it, so I won't mention those points again.
Love it. Thank you, Reynold. So it was show me what I need before I even know myself. Buy frugally, get it convenient. I guess, again, linked to Pavel's point, ultimate convenience, and just pay as effortlessly as possible, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. And Angus, you've got the final word, the store of the future.
Well, yeah, look, it's this is something which, look, as all retailers, I'm sure we spend a lot of time thinking about, and the future of our industry and the future of the customer experience that we're looking for is really in the context of a now borderless world of retail. And so the switching costs to move to a competitor are lower than they've ever been before. And that means there are really significant and more significant expectations on the type of experience that you create. In my view, particularly as a high involvement retailer, there are really three things that future retail experience must have. Stores must first be experiential, they must be integrated, and they must be curated. Experiential in terms of the richness of the experience that you can create, looking for that more immersive retail engagement, for someone to take the time out of their day to come and visit your physical store or spend time engaging with one of your digital platforms. It has to be a rich and engaging experience that really brings through the fullest of the opportunity that's created by the category that you play in. Integrated obviously goes back to a lot of the discussion we've had earlier on, recognising interconnection between the different touch points of your brand and making sure that you are delivering that seamless experience. And the final point around a curated offer is really recognising you can't be all things to all people. You've got to present customers with a relevant and meaningful offer that's best targeted to them. And so looking at perhaps a narrower assortment of product carried in your local physical store, but maybe broader extended ranges of product online. And we talked a little earlier on about endless aisle as a way to do that. That allows perhaps a smaller, more targeted local physical store footprints, and then leveraging those digital channels to really give customers access to the fullest extent of the range that's possible in the place that you play. So that's those three areas: experiential, integrated, and curated.
Love it. And mastering that niche rather than trying to be everything to everyone.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to the end of the all-star panel. I've actually I love the conversation, guys. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Thank you to Angus, Reynold, Pavel, and Abhishek for joining me today. I really, really enjoyed the discussion, and it was brought to you in partnership with Unbxd. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of the eTail Virtual Summit, and I'm sure I will see you very soon. Take care. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.